Hey folks, Nathan P. Butler here, continuing our series of content overview videos for Star Wars Villainous. As I mentioned last time with Scum and Villainy, each of these small expansions so far, they all have a Target exclusive version. They tend to get released a little early at Target. There's a Target exclusive version that tends to have a new slipcover over top of the regular box and an alternative version that's exclusive to Target of one of the movers, one of the character game pieces you move around your sector to different locations. There are no gameplay differences at all. I personally don't really tend to care that much which version of a Villainous expansion I get, regular or Target. It just so happens that because I tend to order from Target and there's a Target nearby, so I can get them as soon as possible, that means that typically I will wind up with the Target versions to show you. But I can't guarantee that for all releases going into the future here, but I'll certainly try. So, we have this new expansion here, Revenge at Last. It's a Star Wars Villainous. Got the holocron there with Maul showing through it. Exclusive game piece included, Revenge at Last, and kind of the foil treatment there. We have Villainous with Star Wars on that side. And on that side, that is the slipcover. That is the end and the other end of the regular box. And as we did last time, we will take a look here at the slipcover back first, and then very quickly look at the box back, but the box back is just only slightly different, showing you the regular version of the mover. Again, this is the Target exclusive version. I'll show you the Target version of the mover. I cannot show you the regular one, but it'll be obvious how it should look by looking at the regular box back. So, you notice here first that the number of new villains in each set keeps dropping. The original set was the starter set. You always expect the starter set of a Villainous game to wind up with way more villains than any other box, and it did. There were 5. From the prequel era, we had General Grievous and Asajj Ventress. From the original trilogy era, we had Darth Vader. From the sort of gap between the OT and the sequel trilogy, we had Moff Gideon. And then we had Kylo Ren from the sequel trilogy. In the last set we looked at, Scum and Villainy, we had Boba Fett, who kind of crosses eras quite a bit. Cad Bane, who also crosses eras quite a bit. Then we had the Seventh Sister, primarily limited to the immediate pre-original trilogy era. Well, here we've got 2 from far-flung ends of the Skywalker saga. We have Darth Maul, who of course we saw in the prequel trilogy, we saw in Clone Wars, we saw in Rebels, we saw in Solo, and so on. So he kind of gets around there. But kind of towards the beginning of the Star Wars on film era, if we ignore the Acolyte. And then we have Captain Phasma from way down the line in the sequel trilogy. But only 2 this time. So it says Order and Chaos. Conquer the galaxy as your favorite Star Wars villains with card strategies inspired by the films, shows, and stories you love. Wield your sinister influence and unique abilities in this immersive game of dark destinies. Be the first villain to achieve your objective to win. Choose your villain. Signature sculpted movers and custom art of your favorite Star Wars media adorn your villain's cards and board. I will agree, I do like the fact that it's got the artwork rather than just being always pictures from the films. Control your sector, which again is your board for this game. Move your villain each turn to access actions and play cards. How will you cleverly manipulate events in your favor? Then fulfill your destiny. Use the enclosed villain guides to learn your villain's unique strategy. Start playing in minutes with video instructions. The reminder here about sort of the business model, you might say, or the expansion model for Villainous, whether it is Disney, Marvel, or Star Wars. And that is that every single one of these boxes is standalone if you want it to be. You can simply break out one expansion, one box, play with just those characters. The only limitation then is how many players can actually be involved. You may recall that when we looked at Scum and Villainy, there were 3 characters in it, but it said it played 2 to 4 players, which is impossible out of that box. It's actually 2 to 3. Here they say 2 plus, so a little bit better there, but the plus doesn't come into play here unless you got other expansions. But every single one of these villains plays essentially separately. This has been described as a game where you're sort of playing solo most of the time with a little bit of interaction through fate cards and sort of the race to finish first, which is basically true. But that means that in order to maximize the amount of asymmetrical characters they can have, every single character has all of their own stuff. their own board, their own cards, and so on. Even when other players get in your way, it's by playing fate cards that come with that specific character, the character being impeded. So as it says here, you can play this game on its own or mix and match with villains from other Star Wars Villainous titles. You can use any of the currently existing 10 villains in any mix and match you like. The game is made for 2 to 4 players, but again, as I've mentioned before, there is an awesome solo variant called the Quarantine variant you can find on Board Game Geek. Quarantine because it was made during the pandemic, during lockdowns. But it's a great way to either play this quickly solo in a fun sort of timed challenge, or just learn how each character plays before you do play the multiplayer game. But in any event, that is the model here. Either mix and match, or treat them as standalone, it doesn't matter. Age 10 plus, 2 plus number of players as mentioned, 40 minutes. This is because they've been suggesting 20 minutes per player. There's only 2 characters in this one, so 40 minutes is a suggestion. Then we have all of our legalese and content list and UPC, company name, all that kind of stuff down here at the bottom. But if you look over in this section, it shows you example cards and examples of the movers. Phasma is always the same. It is Maul who is different. You'll notice here, Maul starts red and sort of changes to black by the time you get to the bottom of the mover. That is not the case with the retail regular version. You'll notice here, everything else is essentially the same. Maul is just straight red. The only difference in the mover that's exclusive for Target is that he goes from red to black instead of just being red the entire time. Not really a big deal unless perhaps you are a collector. As to the sides, there's the sides without the slipcover. And then here's your cover without the slipcover, just Star Wars Villainous, Revenge at Last with Maul. We then have our instruction manual here for Villainous. Again, these always go through and actually take the time to swap out the images, even if it's the same kind of image as in other rulebooks, to show you components from the game that you actually own. In this case, though, as you're flipping through, one thing that you will discover is that when you get to around page 14, which is usually where there are special rules, if there are any that you need for that particular set, there are not any for this one here. So it's all essentially the same stuff that we have seen before. Power of the Dark Side needed to include missions, and Scum and Villainy needed to include information about bounties and contacts, but no such extra necessary rules for this one. So for once, it's kind of a redundant rulebook if you already have the other sets. Unsurprisingly, because the box is meant to be able to be played by itself if you so desire, we do have, again, more redundancy with the tokens that are included. We have 25 credits again, 25 ambition tokens again, and yes, 15 strength tokens again. So again, the same number of all 3 of these common components between all 3 boxes, regardless of the number of characters that each box actually contains. Kind of weird. We also again have 1 reference card per villain that is included in the box. So in this case, 2 of them. They are double-sided. That's one side, that's the other side. They are identical. One gives you a reference for all the different symbols that you might wind up seeing when playing the game, and the other one has your villain objectives summarized for easy reference by other players. And yourself, but probably mostly the other players. So just as a refresher, in case I reference them as we're looking at the different components here, you have a symbol to collect credits that'll always have a number in it that lets you get credits. That first currency that we saw, that is how you play some cards. You then have the discard cards action. You can discard as many as you like from your hand. Then at the end of your turn, you draw up to 4 or whatever your current hand limit is, though bear in mind that that's not an enforced limit. Throughout the game, it is just when you draw up at the end to determine whether you draw up at all. You can play a card. This is how you play cards that have a credit cost. You can maneuver, which essentially means either moving an ally from one location to another on your sector, your player board, or if you have ships out in deep space on the far right, you can choose to engage or disengage your ally vehicles from hero vehicles at will with the maneuver action. Then we have the fate symbol. That is how other players are going to be able to interrupt the flow of your game by drawing 2 cards from your fate deck, choosing one and playing it against you. And I don't think I mentioned this when talking about Scum and Villainy, but it applies throughout the entire Star Wars Villainous line. But whenever an opponent does use a fate action to use fate against you, if there is an unengaged ally vehicle and an unengaged hero vehicle in deep space on your sector, they could forego drawing cards at all and instead just force a re-engagement. Vanquish is how you will typically use either allies on the villain side to take out heroes on the hero side, or to cause one of your ally vehicles to take out a hero vehicle. We have that activate symbol. So far, we have not seen that in this game at all. It's something that's common for other Villainous games, but so far not Star Wars. We didn't see that used at all in either of our first two boxes. Will it appear here? We'll see. Then we have the ambition icon that lets you take actions for ambition, which might include playing a card that instead of having credits like this one, has an ambition cost, or maybe there's already a card out there with an ability on it that is an ambition triggered one that you can pay a cost to use the ambition ability on that card. Notice here that's similar to activate. I'm assuming that is why activate hasn't shown up yet, because most cards would have an ability on them that you might use an activate to trigger instead are getting triggered by ambition and paying an ambition cost, even if the cost is 0. Then, of course, getting away from shared components, each individual villain will have their own sector, their own board to play with throughout the game. So for Maul, when it's closed, you have this quote there saying, "Run if you want, or stay and die. It makes no difference to me." And then for Captain Phasma, "Execution by blaster is too good for them. Let's make this hurt." And as always, it's just stuff inside or there with the quote. There's nothing actually on the back of any of these. So let's take a look at these individual villains, starting with Maul. Now, Maul here, I gotta say, is a pretty tough one to play, but I really love the thematic mechanism for this, because his goal is to defeat a hero with another hero. In other words, Maul is going to wear down a hero's resistance until they turn to the dark side and come over to his side, then build up their strength through training until they are then able to go out and defeat another hero, perhaps one of their former comrades, as proof of their loyalty in turning to the dark side. I love that mechanism. It reminds me very much of what happened, of course, with Ezra Bridger and all when he first met Maul in Rebels. So we have our mover here, as mentioned. It goes from basically sort of red to black here with the highlights and all. Kind of neat looking here. Not sure I would have cared if it was just the red one or this, but this is the Target exclusive version of the thing here. And of course, no tokens here, otherwise I would have shown you here. So we're just going to take a look at his villain deck, his fate deck, and of course they all come with their own little guide that explains to you how to play that particular villain. So I'll explain exactly how that whole wearing down, recruiting, and all that kind of stuff works as we go. Let's start looking at his villain deck, which has, appropriately enough, a red background here with his name and all. So here are his allies. He has Mandalorian Super Commandos, 4 of them, but notice when using a Vanquish action, place Mandalorian Super Commandos into Maul's hand. So as long as you're using them in a Vanquish action and something else isn't removing them from play, they come back into your hand to be able to be redeployed for that 2 credits when using one of those play a card actions there. Then we have tour guide droids. Holy Sith! Could it be the freaking activate icon for once? Awesome! So he would just have to land on one of the locations. Again, you have to move to a new location at the beginning of every turn right after you collect 1 fate token. So he'll move to a location, and wherever he is, he can use those actions. He could use an activate action here. Except he has no activate symbols on his board. That's going to mean it's got to be the domain of one of his vehicle cards that gets played into deep space, which, as you'll recall, always have 3 action symbols and an ability. Hopefully, and yeah, it is, one of those is going to actually be an activate icon. So the way this would work, since it's the first time we're seeing a card like this, is you'll pay your 1 credit when you do a play a card action. You will play the tour guide droids, and there are 4 copies of it, to a location as usual. And I can just leave that there because there's plenty of these to show you. Then it'll sit there with a strength of 2. Anytime you would use an activate action you can activate tour guide droids to maneuver a hero to a location with a tour guide droid, and that hero gains -1 strength. This is important because the first step of going through and breaking down a hero to turn them into your apprentice so they go out and kill one of the other heroes is that you have to reduce their strength down to 0. This gives a -1 strength. It says gain -1 strength. That means put one of those -1 strength tokens on it to lower its strength by 1. Another thing you can do to lower their strength by 1 is defeat them in a vanquish action, which still gets rid of the cards on the villain side that participated, but that one on the hero side actually just stays there and gets a -1 strength put onto them. Again, working their way down to 0, and tour guide droids can help, hence having 4 of them within his repertoire here. Then we have just one ally that is a singleton here, appropriately enough, Savage Opress. When using a vanquish action, reduce a hero strength by 2. And fairly powerful himself with 4. But he does cost ambition to play, not credits. Then we have a bunch of effect cards, starting with Visions of Maul, which will discard his hand and draw 6 cards. So 2 copies of that. Formerly Darth, now just Maul. Not according to the name on your little sector there, buddy. This is nice because basically it's like a currency exchange. You play this between moving to a new location and actually doing any actions there, and for any ambition card costs that you might have, you instead get to pay credits for them. That is very nice. 2 of those. They have Old Master. I'm sorry, I do these terrible impressions of the character. Sometimes I try, sometimes I don't. I might as well not even try with Darth Maul, but I have to because the portrayal by Sam Witwer in animation is my favorite vocal performance of any Star Wars character ever. Sam Witwer is amazing as Maul. Anyway, so call me Old Master. Right, so this lets them give strength. So, again, drop one down that's on the hero side to 0. As soon as they hit 0 strength, you move them from the hero side to the villain side. Now they're effectively an apprentice. Then you have to build them up, though, because in order to defeat a hero to fulfill the win condition, they'll need more than 0 strength to do that. This will give them that 2 strength. So essentially helping you build them up after you have torn them down. That's 2. Then one last lesson, of course, from the final arc of Clone Wars there, lets you perform an activate action or a maneuver action. So, activate action, this is another way to use those tour guide droids, for example. And we'll see there's another example of it as well. 2 of those. Then Together You and I, also from the Clone Wars here. Also for trying to build them up. Maneuver a hero to Darth Maul's location. If that hero's on Maul's side of the sector, meaning the villain side, they gain +2 strength. So another one beefing them up. 2 of those. Join me or die. This is cool because a typical vanquish action, say you had a hero over here with a strength of 4, perhaps. You would have to have enough ally cards on your side to add up to at least 4 strength to do a vanquish action to actually take out that hero, and then the hero gets discarded, in this case -1 strength instead, but then any of those allies that combine their forces to participate, they're gone too. Here, you gain a vanquish action, so you can just do it, and you can use an ally with less strength than the targeted hero's current strength to perform a vanquish action, so you still wind up taking them out, despite the fact that you didn't have enough strength to technically do it. Then those were all effects that had 2 copies. Here's one with 1 copy. My power was almost absolute. All heroes in play gain -1 strength, gain 1 ambition for each hero affected. The downside here is that the characters, once you've gotten to 0 strength and moved them over to the villain side, they are still considered heroes. So yes, this would take 1 strength from one that's already over here, but it would help kind of in the early game when nobody's made the crossover yet. Then, I am the enemy of your enemy. That doesn't make you my friend. Remove any card in play from both the hero and villain sides of the sector, gain 1 ambition. So kind of like a clash that hits both sides, essentially there. Then as you would expect, 2 ships. Most of them have 2 ships. We have the Scimitar, lets you maneuver an ally to a location with the hero, also has the maneuver action, discard cards action, and ambition action. Not bad. This is the important one though, the Night Brother, that lets you not only gain 3 ambition, and has the ambition icon and vanquish icon, which you're going to particularly need, but this is also where you're actually going to find and activate action icon so that if it's out in deep space, there's actually one on your freaking board. You don't have to rely on that other card we saw a moment ago to be able to actually activate things like the tour guide. And that's important because he also has one item, the Sith Holocron. Played for 4 ambition, there's an activate symbol. If you activate using this or that other card we saw a moment ago, you can pay 1 ambition, you can reveal fate cards until you reveal a hero, play that hero, and give them -2 strength. So that is a nice way to get heroes out there and right off the bat they're weakened. But boy, does it take a lot to get them out there because you somehow have to get that activate icon into play, or an equivalent. I would note here that this is one of those instances of an item actually not being basically an attachment. This just gets played out to your sector here. It doesn't really matter where. Most of the items we've seen so far are actually just things that work as attachments, but not this one. Then finally we have 2 each of 2 conditions. And again, for those who are confused with this, a condition is conditional. It does not mean a condition like stunned or frozen or anything like that. It means when on another player's turn something happens, you can then play this from your hand out of turn. So you have holocrons merged, basically helping you get ambition, and you mean my apprentice. This is another one that helps you to knock down the strength of a hero. Now, before we grab the Fate deck, just to make sure I don't forget, I should note the locations that he has on his sector. We have Night Sister Temple, Throne Room Mandalore, Sith Temple Malachor, and Dune Sea Tatooine. I hear this is a great location for screaming the last name of your nemesis really loud. But let's look at his Fate deck here. As always, it is 15 cards, and there's actually only 4 heroes in there that you might be working to try to corrupt to your side or make the target, whenever you have corrupted one, to go after another. So we have Kanan Jarrus, or Jarrus, I always say it wrong, and honestly I get mixed up on which is correct. You know, Han, Han, Leia, Leia. Kanan is pretty freaking powerful. He has a strength of 6, so it's going to take a while to whittle him down. When he's played, all other heroes in play get +1 strength, but yes, that would include any that are already corrupted onto your side there. And it allows the player that's doing the Fate action against you to keep revealing Fate cards until they find a vehicle and play that vehicle, so a hero vehicle out into deep space. Remember, the Fate icon is the one that you don't do yourself to yourself. You do it, but you do it to another player by using things from their Fate deck, or causing a re-engagement of ships on their sector. So this isn't an ally vehicle coming out. Kanan coming out also is bringing out a hero vehicle. He's rough. Then we have Ezra Bridger, strength of 5. When he's played, you give all other heroes in play +1 strength also, and you find and play the Jedi Holocron, which is an item we will find inside the Fate deck as well here in a moment. Ahsoka Tano, when she's played, same thing, give all other heroes in play +1 strength. When Maul is at her location, all cards cost +1 ambition or credits, and she has a strength of 6 as well. Then we have Obi-Wan Kenobi, or should I say Obi-Wan Kenobi? Yeah, I'm not going to wake up everybody in the house for that one. You get the gist. Again, Whitworth is awesome. When Obi-Wan Kenobi is played, give all other heroes in play +1 strength. Again, Obi-Wan Kenobi ignores strength reductions less than 2, so he's very hard to corrupt. When Maul moves to Obi-Wan Kenobi's location, he must discard half his hand at random rounded down, and a strength of 7. Yeah, Obi-Wan's probably not going to be who you're going to corrupt, which makes sense. Then we have our effects, 2 copies of You Have Been Replaced, where he loses ambition or credits, whichever he has more of. 2 copies again of Brother Lost. Now this one sounds like it could be really good for you, but remember, this is what the other player is playing against you in a Fate action, so it's not going to go that way. Choose a hero, you may remove up to 2 negative strength tokens from that hero. So it backpedals some of the corruption you're doing as you're whittling down the strength of one of those heroes. Yes, in theory, they could remove negative strength tokens from the one you corrupted to make them get stronger faster, but no, because it says may, and anyone trying to beat you is never going to choose to do that. So 2 of those. We have You Had Your Chance, 2 of those, and 1 copy of I Am Lost, where you remove an ally or vehicle from Darth Maul's side of the sector. So just get them out of there. Notice though it is ally or vehicle, they can't do that to heroes, so your corrupted hero is safe. As for vehicles, as expected, we have 2 here In the Fate deck, we have the Tribunal and the Ghost. One maneuvering heroes around, another one basically allowing a hero to just remove an ally at their location. Then we have our one item. It says Jedi Holocron. Jedi Holocron is not attached to a hero and covers actions. So it still gets played to a location like the Sith Holocron, because yes, the pair is here, but it does cover up those actions. Remember, you have 4 action icons at any regular location. You have 3 on any vehicles that are in play in deep space that are not engaged. But anytime a hero or item, anytime something is played into the hero side that actually has to go into the location, unless the rules say otherwise, it's going to cover up this shaded area and block 2 of the 4 actions. That is a strategic part of this game. When a hero is maneuvered from the Jedi Holocron's location, they gain +2 strength. If Darth Maul is at the Jedi Holocron's location, he may pay ambition equal to the number of heroes in play to remove Jedi Holocron. So basically something that, as it's out on the board, as heroes are moving back and forth across that location, it's managing to beef them up to make them, again, harder to corrupt with that Jedi knowledge. And finally, we have one restriction, Mandalorian Sarcophagus. While Mandalorian Sarcophagus is in play, Maul can only take 2 actions per location or vehicle. Remove Mandalorian Sarcophagus by removing allies totaling 4 strength or higher. So interestingly, something that really wouldn't matter if you had a bunch of locations where 2 of the actions were covered up, but still not great. Like I said, it's not necessarily an easy one to play, but I really do enjoy the theme captured here. And I would note it does actually have a similarity with Cad Bane that we saw last time, in the sense that this is another one where a vanquished hero doesn't actually get removed, but the cards that vanquished him or her do. And again, we're putting a token on that hero. Last time it was target tokens for Cad Bane. Now it's those -1 strength tokens to get them down to 0, to get them moved over, which also means it does, for example, include some similarities to what we saw with Gideon, needing to bring Grogu over to the other side. So you'll see that as the game grows, even though the game plays very different depending on which villain you're playing with, there are some commonalities of the kinds of mechanisms that they use to make these asymmetrical characters work. I've always found that fascinating and pretty cool about the Villainous games in all their forms. But now let's move on to Phasma. Captain Phasma is also pretty thematic, also takes a little bit to get through her mission, so I feel like they're pretty balanced in this particular box. Most of the characters are relatively balanced, but the more characters get released, the more we'll find that some of them are a little bit easier to play than others. But in the case of Phasma here is her mover. Standard mover in all boxes here. It is sort of clear, but it's hard to see that it's clear because it looks pretty solid here on camera. Her objective is to have a First Order Stormtrooper officer at each location, and her locations are Tuanul, Starkiller Base, Finalizer, and Supremacy. The way this is going to work is she's going to be promoting different characters. And you notice here you got this image here of a Stormtrooper with a pauldron over here with a 1 on it. This indicates essentially 1 step of promotion, going from a standard Stormtrooper to a Stormtrooper squad leader. This type that's black with the 2 on it indicates going from being a squad leader to being a sergeant. Then the red ones with the Roman numeral 3, which in this case just looks like a freaking rectangle, but whatever. Your ones with the Roman numeral 3 in red indicate going from a sergeant to an officer, and that's what you want. You want a First Order Stormtrooper officer at each of those locations. But we'll find that not all Stormtroopers need to advance the entire way. Some are already partly advanced when you actually get the cards themselves. So you have 6 of the white ones for the first promotion, 5 of the black ones for the second promotion, and then 4 of the red ones for the third promotion, assuming they're all needed. So let's take a look here at her villain deck. Again, I am just going to grab a few at a time, 1 chunk of cards at a time here. The back of the cards, as expected, grayish, silverish for Phasma. So let's start by looking at her allies. And this is where we see the Stormtroopers that can be promoted. So we have First Order Stormtroopers. These are like the base level, kind of like rank 1 out of 4, if you want to call it that. So you start out with First Order Stormtroopers. When they're played, you gain an ambition. So that's good. Little strength, little cost, whatever. But you have 4 of those. So you could have those out there, but they'd have to advance through all 3 ranks above them, which means promoting each one 3 times. That can be time consuming. You also have 1 copy here of the First Order Stormtrooper Squad Leader. That is that 2nd rank. So in his case, he'd only need to go up 3 different ranks. And when you are in a vanquish action, typically whoever's doing the vanquishing and the vanquished get discarded. One of her unique abilities here is that for some of these cards, it'll say to pay X ambition, in this case 1, to keep them in play after being used in a vanquished action, so you don't lose them and their promotions. So you'll need ambition to keep them out there, to keep them alive long enough to basically get promoted up the ranks. So you have the First Order Stormtrooper Squad Leader, essentially giving it that ability and going to 2 and 2 rather than 1 and 1 like the previous ones we just saw. The next step up, sort of the 3rd rank, is the First Order Stormtrooper Sergeant. You'll pay 2 ambition to keep them around, but it is again just a 2 and 2. And then the First Order Stormtrooper Officer, that is the highest rank, needs no promotion. They can just be at a location to meet one of those requirements. It'll take 3 ambition to keep them in play after an ambition action, but notice it goes to a 3 and 3 rather than a 2 and 2 kind of card here. Then you do have other allies that do stuff for you, but not ones you can promote. We have General Hux here, pretty cool because he allows you to play the Atmospheric Assault Lander, the 1 vehicle for her, automatically for free, and gain 3 ambition, and the location itself gets that maneuver icon. He's only 2 strength, but he only also costs 2 credits to play, so a pretty versatile card here. Then the First Order Executioner Trooper, not one that can be promoted because it does not have First Order Stormtrooper in the name anywhere, but it does allow you to basically just move a hero to their location, and when you use a vanquish action to take him out, you get ambition equal to the strength of the hero, so it does allow you to sort of build up your ambition quickly. First Order Flame Troopers, basically their big thing is they allow you to basically attack at locations adjacent to the one they're at when you're using a vanquish action. And then we're back to those First Order Stormtroopers again. Then we have our effects here. Following orders, pretty important. Perform a vanquish action that includes a Stormtrooper. Award a Pauldron token from the next rank to 1 Stormtrooper used in that vanquish action. Do not discard that Stormtrooper. So you can keep a higher rank one in play by paying ambition to keep them alive. But if you're going to promote them, you could play this for 3 ambition, do a vanquish action without having to use a vanquish action off the board, and then the one that gets promoted doesn't get discarded anyway. You don't have to pay the ambition also to keep them alive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those. Then So Good to Have You Back, which lets you reveal fate cards till you find a hero, then place them at Phasma's location, so it gets heroes out there so you can do some vanquishing. 3 of those. Forged in Battle, also important. Remove an ally. Give a Stormtrooper a Pauldron of the next rank. So basically, one of them gets sacrificed, the other one goes up in rank. Kind of like the motivation of seeing comrades fall in battle and wanting to fight on in their memory. 2 of those. You're always scum. Let you get some allies back, but you do have to pay 1 credit per, but that's a pretty decent deal there. 2 of those. And on my command, only 1 copy of this one. All allies in play gain +1 strength. Then, as I mentioned, she only has 1 vehicle, which is the Atmospheric Assault Lander from the beginning of The Force Awakens, but it does give ambition when she lands on it as a location, and does have those 3 icons, though they're not really anything to write home about. And then she has 3 copies each of 2 different conditions. We have This Is Just Business, which allows her to get ambition equal to the credits that another player has just gained, which is kind of cool there. And then Report to My Division at Once, which basically kind of makes it so that if the other player is going to play a hero, they might want to think twice by doing a fate action and playing a hero at you or at another player, because you could play this conditional card here and take any Stormtroopers from your discard pile and place them into your hand, helping you get them back out there quickly if they have been defeated. 3 of those. Then you have her 15-card Fate deck. There's the back there. And really, I gotta say, it just kind of messes with her in sort of general ways, except for 1 card that's very specific to her particular goal that she's trying to reach. So we'll start with the heroes. We have all one-offs here. We have Chewbacca, Han Solo, BB-8, Finn, Rose Tico, and then we get to our effects, and this is the effect that is specific to her goal. Undercover agents. Remove one pauldron token from a stormtrooper, replace it with the next lower rank. Now, this cannot reduce the rank of a card beyond what is actually printed on it. So, like, if you played this against a stormtrooper officer, the actual officer card, it does nothing because you can't demote them beyond the rank that they're at. But if you had maybe a sergeant who'd been promoted to officer, this could knock them down from officer to sergeant. And there are 2 of those in the Fate deck. Then you have 2 copies of Stealing Your Stuff and 2 copies of Is There a Garbage Chute? Then 1 copy of Rebel Scum. 1 copy of Hey! Yes, just Hey. And then only 1 vehicle for the Fate deck also, which makes sense to try to keep them balanced, right? We've seen it balanced throughout so that anyone that is out there could be engaged. We have the Libertine. Then we have the 1 restriction, which again is going to screw around with her goal. That typically is the case with restrictions overall, but not most of the other cards except for that 1 effect. We know what you did. While this card is in play, Captain Phasma cannot award pauldron tokens. Remove this card by removing an ally with a cost of 3 credits or more. So another one that's kind of about build up, build up, build up in order to win. And there you have it, folks. That is a full content overview for Star Wars Villainous: Revenge at Last. Again, the only reason the Target one is considered exclusive is it does have that slightly different Darth Maul mover and the slipcover. You'll get the same gameplay out of any version you get of Revenge at Last. And I do think this is well worth getting. Those 2 villains are very thematic. They play quite different from the other villains that we've seen. But I can see how some would say that the value proposition here might be a little bit lower because you are only getting 2 villains rather than 3 or 5. Either way, though, this is the newest set, so this ends our content coverage for now, but as more sets are released, I will be back to cover those as well. Thanks for watching.